at 7:30. Does everyone agree at 7:30? All right, so we'll do a call to order for the Borough Council regular meeting for November 16, 2022. Can I get a roll call?
President Ferguson.
Here.
Vice President Gerard.
Here.
Councilmember Fagan.
Here.
Councilmember Presser.
Here.
Councilmember Stevens.
Here.
Mayor Gerard.
Here.
Borough Manager Snyder.
Here.
Borough Solicitor Harper.
Here.
All right, we'll do our pledge of allegiance now. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilman Stevens, we do our invocation.
Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, we thank you and praise you for the blessing of this day, and for this opportunity to serve our community. We ask now that you would be with us and give us your wisdom as we work on behalf of our neighbors. Praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, we'll get to item 1 on our agenda, approval of meeting agenda. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second. You get it first.
Second.
All right. I got a motion from Councilman Presser, a second from Councilman Gerard. Any questions or changes? Having none? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right, item 2, approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes for October 5th, 2022 workshop and the October 19th regular meeting?
So moved. I'll second.
I got a motion from Councilor Stevens, a second from Councilor Fagan. Any questions or changes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. Item 3, public input. Anyone in the public, please rise, state your name and address, and the reason for addressing council today. And if you'd like, you can step over the podium and use the mic. It'd be easier. Sure. How you doing, Dan?
Logan Cox, 32 School Street. Just a couple comments regarding the draft budget that I'm thinking answers can come out during the discussion. I'm not sure how to maybe you can explain. Is there a reason why you have 3 different funds, general, electric, sewer, and a lot of the same expenditures come out of all 3? I guess the question I'm asking is, it seems like it'd be much simpler to pay everything out in general when you're already transferring money there. So I was curious if there was a statute or something that there's a reason why you don't do that. The other question I had regarding the budget was, I seen the capital, I guess it was capital reserve fund. There's some transfers from investment accounts, which is ultimately being used to pay for road service. So I'm curious why it's not, there's a balance in the liquid fuels fund. I was curious why it's not being used for that. And then in the bill list, I've seen bill for the audit, and I'm just curious when that will be discussed and how the meeting next year. It was presented by the auditors, audit findings. All that.
Which one we can address them now or during the budget?
Let's go ahead and ask on that.
Okay, so Diane can also attribute to why that we have several funds. So yes, that is correct. Most of the services come out of all 3 funds, but not all services come out of all 3 funds. So it's just easier and a requirement by our auditor to track, especially electric revenues. If we have a $4 million budget, then it comes in electric. And I know we do have some interfund transfers, especially for other police services and those things. So a lot of times it's dictated by DCED and the chart of accounts that we have to keep per them, like why things are listed in certain ways. But it's also some things come over the 3 accounts, but some things don't. Like there are some sewer repairs that might just come out of the 08 of the sewer fund. So that's, if Diane wants to add anything else to why. Okay. For the capital reserves fund or, so we have it listed currently as transferring from invested funds. What we're actually talking about doing is borrowing the money for the project. So to create a balanced budget, right now, we don't have the funds borrowed, because if we went out today to borrow it at 4.3% on an estimated $1.6 million project, it might look at $119,000 debt payment over 20 years. You know, these are just sample numbers, but we didn't put the project out to bid yet. So the project, we don't know, it could be 1.6 million, it could be a $2 million project, and those debt payments would be significantly different. So we put it in the budget as transferring from our investments, as that's like what an option that we could do, because we have over $2 million in invested funds. And we didn't want to use the revenue from electric, because we know that we have upgrades that we want to do to our system to keep the money in electric. So that item we're looking to borrow for 2023, and looking to take it on some debt service payment for that. An estimated number was $57,000 in 2023. Like I said, that's on $1.6 million, and those numbers can change, and it can change on the interest at the market. And finally, the audit. Diane and I received a few days ago the draft audit. So we just have to review it, and then our auditor is looking to schedule to come in probably at the last meeting in December, just because the first meeting in December, we have 3 public hearings already. We have a presentation from a developer, but we are looking to get him in by the end of the year so he can give the audit presentation like he's done in the past. I know last year we kind of missed out on that. Just the timing, we didn't have that presentation like we normally do, but we're trying to get him scheduled to come in by the end of the year to present the audit. We just received that a few days ago.
You're saying that the draft budget right now does not reflect the borrow, taking money out of the reserve balance.
Correct. Yes, and another reason why we did that is when we borrowed money in 2021, we borrowed, and then we still haven't made, we had to make principal payments and interest payments because we haven't received the grant funds back. I think we might have borrowed a little bit too early. COVID, you know, we're still working back from the pandemic and those things. So the closer we can borrow to the project start date and know the number, I think the less interest payments and the less principal payments we'll have to pay. So we've talked about in budget, finance, and labor, that the project has to go out to budget, or sorry, has to go out to bid. It's supposed to be by the end of this year, and to get those numbers so we can know what it looks like to accurately try to reflect that in the budget.
All right, if there's nothing else, we'll go on to item 4, announcements.
Next council meetings, December 7th workshop and December 21st regular meeting, 7:30 PM here in council chambers. The planning commission is scheduled to meet on Monday, December 5th at 7 PM here in council chambers. PROC is scheduled to meet Wednesday, December 21st at 8 AM here in council chambers. The Hatfield Museum Historical Society is scheduled to meet Tuesday, November 22nd at 7 PM at the Hatfield Volunteer Fire Company. The borough offices will be closed Thursday and Friday, November 24th and 25th, in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday. Public hearings scheduled for December 7th are ordinance number 547, amending chapter 7 of the Borough of Hatfield Code entitled Fire Prevention and Fire Protection to add requirements for residential outdoor fires. Ordinance number 548, amending chapter 2 of the Borough of Hatfield Code entitled Animals to add requirements for the responsible handling and leashing of dogs and other pets. And ordinance number 549, amending chapter 27 zoning of the Borough Code of Ordinances to add requirements for the placement of collection bins. I also wanted to add that on Saturday, December 3rd, is the Hatfield Community Christmas tree lighting and special event. It starts at 2:30 PM at Grace Lutheran Church with pet pictures with Santa, followed by 5 o'clock hot dog meal and drinks by Philly Espresso at Grace Lutheran Church. And then 6 o'clock walk down to Railroad Plaza at Memorial Park, and we'll sing and welcome Santa. 6:30, the tree gets lit up.
Any questions on the announcements? All right, if there are none, we'll go to item 5, reports and correspondence. Monthly year-to-date.
Monthly year-to-date was included in your packets. Wanted to highlight that though it's down from September, the reason the revenues and expenses were higher than our average 500 and some thousand was for revenues. We received the $200,000 for the CDBG grant. And then expenses last month on our bill list, we paid ADA, paving, we had our MMO contribution, and then we also had the roughly $34,000 that we had to pay back to Monco Treasury because they credited Hatfield Borough when they meant to credit Hatboro Borough. So we had to make that payment back. So that's why the expenses were higher than average for October.
Any questions? All right, item B, the police report.
Just in addition to the report that you had, there was no issues on election day, so it was a good thing. And as far as our hiring update, we have 3 new officers that will be starting with us. One will be starting academy in January. She has obviously no police experience, so she'll be getting her Act 120 certification. And the other 2 are in academy right now. They'll be coming out in December, and then they'll start with their FTOs.
Yes, absolutely.
I just wanted to ask attention, I know I noticed that there are 2 noise complaints in the incidents. I was wondering if Hatfield Police are aware that we did put some noise limitations in the ordinance. And whether that had anything to do with these, it doesn't say where they were, so I can't tell.
No, they were, let's see, they were both residential. And when people are cooperative with us, we don't worry about going any further as long as they go in for the evening or whatever they need to do to turn down the music.
Right, because you'll remember we did amend the ordinance to say you can have outdoor entertainment at a certain restaurant in town, but it has to be quiet at the, I
Right.
think 70 decibels.
And it wasn't to do with the restaurant.
It wasn't that one.
It was
Okay.
not. No.
Good. All right, just checking.
Any questions for the lieutenant? How was truck traffic?
Has not been bad. Warnings given at this point mostly, but there hasn't been a lot of infractions that they've caught anyway. So.
All right, for a number of questions, we'll go on to item C, the fire department report.
Fire department report was included in your packets for the first 9 months of the year. Total calls were 244. I looked at previous years, roughly they were at 267, so it seems pretty comparable. In Hatfield Borough, year to date was 39 calls, years previously were 35. So it seems also comparable to what they've been running in the municipality over the last couple of years.
Any questions? All right, if not, we'll go on to item D, the EMS report.
EMS report located in your packets for October. The total zone calls were 16 this month, but the total EMS calls were up to 995. Last month, there was a total of 925 total calls. So significant number of increase of calls in the VMSC area. We had 21 in September, so yeah, a little less, but definitely a larger number of calls in October.
Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, no, I didn't see, I was trying to look to see a specific reason, the number of calls. It's just that they, I know that they are working in a partnership to take over and merge with Souderton EMS and Telford EMS. I'm not sure if they were going outside of the VMSC boundaries in partnership with that, or if maybe there were just more fall incidents, or they reported to more hospital calls. I'm not, they didn't really determine why the calling volume was higher.
All right, any questions? All right, if not, we'll go to item 6, the 2023 preliminary budget presentation. So I'm gonna let Jamie do the talk through most of this, but I just want to let everyone know that we've been meeting for a couple months now to go through it. And I think the budget that's presented reflects Jamie's and Steve's desire to be proactive in the borough while strengthening our infrastructure for our electric and then also building for the future. So I think this is a pretty good budget so far, and obviously we're open to any questions or thoughts as we go through this. So having said that, I'll turn it over to Jamie.
Great, thank you. I will go over the budget, not specifically line item by line item. There will be highlights that I will, hit on, big changes or changes that are made from 2022 to 2023. Those items, I encourage you to interrupt me at any time and ask any questions that you want. It should be an open dialogue and an open conversation. Budget, finance, and labor, myself, Steve, and Diane are here to answer any questions that you would have. I encourage questions from the public at any time that we can walk through it. We want to be transparent about this process and just be as informative as we can. So this is our 7th version that we've been working through for the 2023 budget. This is probably the 17th version that Diane, Steve, and I have been working through. So on page 2, I just want to highlight, we'll start off with the general fund. So in the proposed 2023 budget, there is no proposed tax increase for real estate taxes in this budget. We will continue to keep the general millage at 3 mills. And we will continue to keep the fire tax at 0.25 mils. Basically, a breakdown of that is that brings our fund $411,328, for 3 mills, and the fire tax gets roughly $34,004 as a quarter mil. So moving on to page 3 in the general fund. So on page 3 in at item rental earnings 342, you can see there's rent for the SEPTA property. So we've been in long conversations about looking into a long-term lease agreement with SEPTA for 11 North Market Street downtown, and what that's going to look like as Hatfield Borough will then become essentially the landlord of the SEPTA property. So in revenues for the general fund, we estimated that once we do the work that needs to be done and is required by SEPTA to bring that property up to date, that to rent, that hopefully that can happen by October in 2023. And we're estimating that we could receive by the end of 2023 roughly $12,000 worth of revenue to the good for Hatfield Borough.
Do you have anybody lined up to take over that once it's refurbished?
I've had conversations with 4 interested parties who are interested in the process. I know Kate would probably, I'm not sure about going out, that it has to go to bid because of it was the kind of conversation that Mike had previously about the SEPTA property and renting it out and just the stipulations that we have to uphold being a
I
municipality.
don't know that we have to put it out to bid. It may be in our best interest to put it out to bid. We're not selling it, we're just leasing it, and it's a subtenant situation. So I think Jamie's pursuing the right way to get people interested. So we'll see if we, have somebody we can offer it to. Also, we don't yet have a signed deal with SEPTA, but the idea is that if we undertake to renovate the building so it's rentable, they'll give us free rent for a series of time and pay us back for helping fix their building and make it rentable.
I think somewhere in the budget there was $55,000 allocated for that. Is that based on actual numbers, or is that just sort of an estimate, or any numbers that SEPTA possibly gave to?
Sure, so the $55,000 for the expenses for the SEPTA property, that is a number that they provided for us. So they went out, they did an analysis of the property, they came back and said it's worth X, and this is the amount of rent you should charge a month, and this is what it would take to get it to be rentable standards, and that was the number that they gave us, the number that's listed in the budget.
You might be able to do it cheaper, you know. Yeah.
Right.
That's the idea.
Yeah. Well, and we talked there in the process of getting quotes and looking at to see what the actual cost would be. So before we finalize the deal and sign off the second. So
Right.
the idea is to figure out to make sure that the $55,000 number is real. It's a real estimate.
Right, because it's going to translate to months we don't have to pay rent, so we want to know.
Right.
Yeah, that's a number that they are proposing to give off for our rent over a certain amount of time, whether we take that money up front over the first 2 years. That would be an agreement that we would work out with SEPTA as part of the lease. As Jason had said, Steve and I have been out the property. Steve's had contractors come in to just try to understand that, is this number a real number that they gave us? Or is the number of the work that we need to bring it up to code for our code department and ADA standards and that, or is the number really 70,000? And we have to go back to SEPTA and say, well, like this number isn't right. We had to start somewhere, and that's where we started at the number they gave us of the 55. On page 4 for general fund revenues, wanted to highlight that this year we are looking to transfer $945,000 from the electric fund into the general fund, and that covers police services. So that is what our police contract is for 2023. That would fully cover our police services. Moving on to the general fund expenses. Most of the expenses have between an estimated 3 or 4% increase. That's just what we decided to put in. We always start the budget at a 3% increase, and oftentimes we'll move it to 4% depending on the category, depending what it is. So you'll see across the board roughly a 3 or 4% increase in most of these categories. So I won't go through and highlight every single category, but if you have specific questions on any category before I get to page 8 for expenses, the 2 I wanted to highlight was the building repair maintenance, which is 409. And you can see there's a significant increase from 2022 to 2023. Just in the general fund, goes across all 3 categories, so the total will be 43,000 over the general, the electric, and the sewer. How these are split is 50, 40, 10. 50% of the fund is funded through the general fund, 40% is from the electric, and 10% is from the sewer. That's how you can add the numbers up across all 3 funds and get your total in blue. So I wanted to highlight the reason that the building maintenance has a significant increase is right off the bat, $22,000 of that is dedicated to garage doors at the Public Works facility. So we had our insurance company come in, they do an audit every year. The Public Works facility also gets audited, and garage doors came up as high priority A that they need to be replaced for safety reasons. Right off the bat, that's $22,000 that wasn't in the budget last year. Other maintenance that's included in that is we have 2 generators that need to be maintenance. We have all of our fire safety, alarm systems, elevator, carpets, anything that's general maintenance for our buildings between the administration building and Public Works is funded through that line item number. So that's why the major increase comes from those garage doors as mentioned. As you can see, a couple of lines down in 409, the SEPTA property, that's what we just referenced. We put the number of the 55,000 is what we got from SEPTA. Of course, that number can change once we have further our conversation about the lease agreement. As you can see on page 9 at the top, that's the expenses that's going out to pay the police services of $945. Underneath then, we just keep $5,000 for operating supplies for our camera system. Sometimes updates need to happen. The police utilize our camera system and all of our parks that we have cameras at. So we designate $5,000 per year for that line item to total $950 for police services. Moving on to page 12 of the budget, I want to highlight our workers' comp, our property and liability, and our healthcare benefits. So as most of you know, we are in a trust pool for our insurance. We get everything through the Delaware Valley Insurance Trust. That's for health, that's for property liability, and that's for workers' comp. So you can see that all three of these funds have significant increases over what was last year. I want to highlight that for workers' compensation, this fund, what the Buyers Council came back and quoted us is a 6% increase in workers' comp rates. That also includes SWIFT, which we pay for the Hatfield Volunteer Fire Company. For property and liability, that's up 26% over last year. The reason property and liability expenses are up 26% is a lot of it has to do with IDA, and when IDA came through, a lot of the municipalities had significant damage, and when you're in a trust pool, you take on that liability of other municipalities as well. There's benefits and non-benefits of being in a trust pool. So, hurricanes and tornadoes came through and did detrimental damage to Horsham and Upper Dublin, and unfortunately, that increased property and liability across the board. So it just so happens that our property and liability for our buildings are located in floodplains. So the 26%, because we're in a floodplain, we have to pay more, and cybersecurity as well. So cybersecurity has been a big issue across the board. To be able to participate in the property and liability trust fund, you have to meet X, Y, and Z requirements for cybersecurity. That's why we went through the cybersecurity assessment. That's why we budgeted $7,000 in this budget for cover that assessment, plus to make the necessary upgrades that we need to get our system basically secure and be able to still participate in the property and liability fund. So that's up 26%. Healthcare benefits, that's up 11% across all three funds. So these all three are funded from the general, electric, and sewer, and those quotes came from our insurance provider. So they are real numbers that we got from our insurance provider that we included in the budget. Another item I want to highlight before we move on from general expenses is on page 13. You can see there's an interfund transfer to capital projects in the amount of $127,000. We're just trying to, when we get to capital projects, we'll talk about the big utility replacement project on Broad Street and Main Street. That right now is estimated at a $1.6 million project. We're trying to pay for some of that on ourselves, so we don't have to borrow everything. So we're just trying to transfer interfund transfers to help cover some of those costs. Fund 3, the fire protection fund, that's basically an in and out. So you have your real estate tax, your shared revenue, and an interfund transfer to make up any differences if SWIFT or your workers' comp came in a little bit higher than it has previously. And your expenses are, we had budgeted $5,000 for equipment purchase. So in the past, Hatfield Volunteer Fire Company has asked us for some equipment purchases or to be able to help them out. And we've had to kind of scramble where are we going to get the funds from. Sometimes they ask us for TAC gear, sometimes they ask us for PPE equipment. So Budget Finance and Labor thought that if we just budgeted $5,000, if they needed anything, that would be what we could offer them. In moving on to Fund 7, the electric fund revenues. So I want to draw your attention to electric system, the metered sales, 372, 410. So as part of this proposed budget in the electric fund, We are proposing a electric fund flat rate increase of $3. So currently now, our flat fee for electric is $12 a month. And we are proposing for the meters that it applies to, going to $15 a month. So for the $15 a month in revenue, that would generate us roughly $51,000 in revenue. And it would only cost the customer $36 annually. So that's just an added $3 a month to your bill times 12 months is $36. So we're generating $51,000 in revenue for $36 for the average customer, residential and light commercial customer. I will talk about when we get to expenses, where some of these expenses are coming in and how we are proactively working on our system and why we need these revenues to keep up with the system. And also talk about that the IOU rates are going up. So we decided, or Budget Finance and Labor decided that they were not going to raise electric rates, even though PP&L, our IOU utility and our transmission raised rates 11% over this past year. Budget Finance and Labor really worked hard not to pass that increase on to our residents. So we felt the $3 a month for $36 a year was a lot more feasible than raising electric rates by a cent or 2 cents or a half a cent, whatever that would look like, to try to make up some of the revenue that trickles down from rising rates on the IOU end. So I'll move on to electric fund expenditures. As you'll see on the first several pages, these again, salaries, wages, they come across all three funds. So they're highlighted in blue on your right-hand side of your paper or your budget. When we get into details specifically related to the electric, on page 21, I wanted to highlight capital construction. So capital construction or pole replacement, in this current draft budget, this has been a conversation that we've talked about, and Steve can certainly chime in, that right now it was listed at $40,000. We upped that in the Budget Finance and Labor meeting this evening to $50,000. The reason we are talking about pole replacements is first, we have to have a reliable system. If the poles aren't standing in the air and the poles are on the ground, the power is out. There are at least 4 poles in the municipality right now that are warranted for replacement. One of those poles actually is at our AMP site, which we call, that's holding the system up. So if that pole goes out, though everything's tight, power is out. So we are trying to be proactive in putting a program together where we can address these poles in the municipality and replace them before they fall down or before somebody else takes them out. So that's the $40,000 for pole replacement. Underneath that is install sectionalizing fuses. If you recall, we have that listed for $30,000 for 2022 and $50,000 for 2023. We just want to finish up the project. So the project we're working on right now is a fuse study. Steve has just got that back from our utility engineers. Steve has ordered the product. We're going to install these sectionalizing fuses around town. And to make it really simple, and Steve can add to this, we're just trying to isolate outages. So if an incident happened on a line that would cause an outage, we could isolate it so the entire circuit wouldn't be out for the entire outage. So right now, if an incident happens on Chestnut Street Circuit, the Chestnut Street Circuit is out. If the incident happened, on whatever location, whatever address, we could isolate that incident down to maybe only affect 10 residents instead of all the residents on the circuit. I know if you heard Steve's report last meeting that the hawk that caused the power outage, we were told that if we would have had sectionalizing fuses already installed in the borough, 90% of the power would have stayed on in Hatfield Borough, or could have been restored almost immediately if we would have these sectionalizing fuses. That's how we can kind of narrow down the incident and how it occurs. So we've committed $50,000 in this proposed budget for 2023 to finish that project. to make the system more reliable for our residents. And underneath that, on capital equipment purchases, for $15,000 is a no-joe reclosure. Currently, right now, we have no backup reclosure. So if our reclosure would go down, we would have no backup. So we have nothing in stock. Multiple municipalities that run electric systems have reclosures in stock, and we have none. And the lead time on reclosures is significant, just because of the world that we're living in and ordering parts and those things. So we were trying to be proactive and having something in stock that if something happened to our reclosure, that we could call in somebody and it could be replaced immediately. We wouldn't be, going down to 2. We wouldn't be waiting around. We wouldn't be waiting for it to come in. It's just trying to be proactive on our system. Further down in culture and recreation on the same page in 21, you'll notice an increase in the Founder's Day event from 7,500 to 15. The reason this increase is next year Hatfield Borough is celebrating 125 years. So we're going to have a big, if you want to call it kind of a fair event, lots of different things for the community to enjoy in celebrating the 125 years. Paroc is working on some sponsorship for that through Hatfield Borough. They're also looking on some fundraising for clothes and things that we can try to help these costs as well. But we know it's going to be a bigger event. We want it to be a great event for our residents, so we want to put the funds towards that to make sure that the day is successful and the residents enjoy. And Fall Festival, you can see that is up as well. $10,000 is a real reflection of what is spent for Fall Festival. It's coming in close at 9,000 by the end of this year. 10,000 is just a real estimate. I think we were under for the past several years of what we actually spend on that event out of our electric fund.
Yeah, nobody knows the history of it. Larry, help with that?
He's on the committee.
Is on the committee? Okay, good.
Yep. So moving from to the sewer fund revenues. As you look at the sewer use charges, 364 on page 24. Also highlighting that in the sewer fund, there is a proposed EDU increase in revenue of $5 per quarter or $20 per year to residents to make the flat fee $50 from $45. What that would generate for us would be $33,000 in revenue, which is almost as equal to $250,000 of a tax increase. And it will only impact residential customers $20 annually. Of course, those who have more EDUs on their property would have a higher bill, such as if somebody has 7 EDUs, some commercial businesses, or, we have laundromats in town. If you have 7 EDUs on your property, you would be at an additional $35 a quarter, which would be an additional $140 a year. As we move through the sewer fund, you can see in the beginning, it's the same that's through the electric, general, and sewer. Those chart across all 3 funds. If we get down to page 27, you'll notice we have sewer repairs listed. Those are just general repairs for sewer. We were at 25 last year. Year to date, we've spent $21,000 in sewer repairs to upgrade the infrastructure in our community. So we're looking to do the same next year. Things that we can do in-house for us save us a lot when we put projects out to bid and those things. So we continue to try to replace manholes and manhole lids and inlets and those things in-house, because the more we can do in-house, we can cut down on those project costs, especially if we're going to be doing mill and overlays in that area. So if we move to page 29 in sewer fund expenditures, I want to highlight 446, which is MS4 and stormwater management. It is increasing to $20,000 in proposed increase to 20,000 in the budget in 2023, simply due to the fact that we are doing a stormwater project that is part of our MS4 permit, which is required by the state. And we are doing that at Heather Meadows. We talked about that at one of the previous meetings where we're looking to do some work in the Heather Meadows Basin to get some credits for MS4. And we believe that that project's gonna roughly come in estimated around, $10,000 to $15,000, 15 on the very high end, I think, 10 looks more like it. And 10,000, rest of that would be for engineering, filing, finishing the permit process and those things. So year to date in MS4, we're actually a little over budget. I think we're roughly $1,000 over. MS4 is expensive. So we just want to make sure we get that project done because it's supposed to be part of our permit and scheduled to be done in March of 2023. I don't know if we'll meet that deadline, but 2023, the project has to happen for us to be able to get the credits for MS4 that are required. Underneath there in 446 is televising mains. You can see that this wasn't listed previously in your budget, though we have done this in Hatfield Borough in the past. Last time we televised the mains was 2018, I believe. This is something that we always used to do. We used to go around, televise the mains. We could get a better understanding of what our infrastructure looked like, get a better understanding of how to respond to PA1 calls for utilities and markouts. It helps the Public Works Department. We want to get back to doing that. For them to come into town for roughly a week, contracted is roughly $15,000. So that's what we are proposing in the budget. Currently, right now, what's proposed to be televised is West Vine Street, Edgewood, and Heather Meadows development, which is not currently televised. So we have no information on those developments or those locations in the borough. What our infrastructure looks like underground, and maybe things that pop up, we would be able to be proactive in the future and budget instead of a repair coming that we had no idea about. And we can kind of plan and have a better roadmap of what the future of our infrastructure and the sewer system is going to look like. So that's the 15,000 for sewer fund expenditures. Moving on to Fund 18 capital projects, page 31. As you can see for the revenues below, we are expected to receive $1,093,000 in PA Small Water H2O grant funds reimbursed through us. We received that from DCED. So the project is slated to start next year. As I said, it goes out to bid at the end of this year. We're looking to get that $1 million revenue back. And also interested in participating with Hatfield Township in an EV charging station grant. This has just been a conversation that we've had with Budget, Finance, and Labor, and a conversation we've had with Hatfield Township, who's interested in jumping on EV charging stations, especially because PA Drive funding is going to be running out in 2023. I know the infrastructure bill that was passed has some funding for EV charging stations. Unfortunately, you have to be within might be a mile or a mile and a half from like a major interstate. So the turnpike, we're just out of that. So we wouldn't be able to qualify for those funds in round one. So PA Drive Smart has funds that are available, but it was stated that they're probably not going to be available after 2023. So we currently have conduit run in the Hatfield Borough building out back where we can put a charging station. It doesn't mean that's where it has to go, but we have that infrastructure already in place. And Hatfield Township reached out and asked if we wanted to do a joint grant together. Because when you do joint grants, you just get, a better chance of getting funding, especially if you intermunicipal grants. So that's the 5,000 in revenue we're hoping to get back from the grant that we applied for. You can see in capital projects on page 32, the interfund transfers I talked about at the beginning of the meeting from the general fund, from the electric fund, from our invested funds, and a transfer from the ARPA funds in the amount of $348,808. So that's the total ARPA funds we received from the pandemic, and we are intending to use them for, you can use them for stormwater management, sewer, those things. We're intended to use it for the utility replacement project on West and East Broad and North Main Street. So we move to capital project expenditures. As you can see, you have the EV charging station there listed for $10,000. As you saw in expenses, you will get 50% of that back based on the grant. Moving down to curb ramps and base repair. So our ADA project for 2023 is slated for Main Street, and $68,000 has been proposed in the budget to complete the ADA ramps necessary on North Main Street. On the next page, on page 34, for mill and overlay, we have projected our mill and overlay will take place on East School, Forest, and Orchard in 2023 for 109,905, those estimated. And talking about inlet and manhole repairs halfway down the page, $20,000 various. So what Steve has come to find is if we take out the inlet and manhole repairs from the mill and overlay project, we save a significant amount of money by doing these projects in-house. So he has created a program where the streets that are going to be mill and overlaid, he does the inlet and manholes on those streets, and he does the streets that might be up for the next year or the following year. He's creating a kind of like a roadmap of what that's going to look like, so we can budget this moving forward. I'm not sure if you found it out, like 40% saving. Yeah, so you save roughly that number if we take these projects out in Public Works takes care of them. And finally, on capital project expenditures on page 35, we have listed 466 comp planning for $12,000. So we went through the codification process, got our ordinances up to date. We're now starting to talk about a comprehensive plan for Hatfield Borough. What does that look like? What does Hatfield Borough want to look like in 2040? Where do we want to be? What development do we want going on? So that all includes a comprehensive plan. So this quote of 12,000 is to work with the Montgomery County Planning Commission. We have not signed anything. We haven't agreed to work with them. This is just what they charge, roughly would charge us a 3-year contract of $12,000 to create a comprehensive plan for the borough. I can't guarantee that we're going to be working on a comprehensive plan in 2023. We're on their list. A lot of people use them. A lot of people are on the list that renew their contracts, but they know they would like we know we would like to work on a comp plan. They know that we would like to use them. So I had a discussion with the planning commission and told them that we would budget it for next year, and they could let us know closer to the end of the year if that seems to be realistic for 2023. But I know it's something that we have talked about. What does downtown look like? Those things. This will all be addressed in that comp plan. Fund 30 capital reserve funds and revenues. Nothing for revenues coming in, and nothing for expenses going out. And Fund 30, moving to the capital sewer capital reserve fund revenues for page 38. As you can see, the sewer connector tapping fee is listed there. It's $77,700. That is the tapping fee that we would get for the 18 townhomes for Bennett's Court and then 3,700 EDU, and also the 3 that we would get for Roosevelt. Both of those developments have already got final approval from Borough Council and are moving forward. We're just working with the developers on the developers agreements to try to get that process to continue to move forward. As you can see, the next page in expenditures, we transfer that 77,000 right to the sewer fund. So that's an interfund transfer that we make to help fund the sewer fund. Liquid fuels revenue in 2023, we're projecting that we're going to get roughly $84,323 on page 40, line item number 355. This is just based on what we've gotten in previous years. Yes, that can change, but this is what we're projecting we're going to get. And in expenditures, as you can see, much different from years past. We are really trying to build this liquid fuels account back up. We have depleted the account. We used to run with, a $200,000+ budget for liquid fuels, and after this year, we've had depleted that account. So, we're really just trying to not use for capital projects, not using for mill and overlay, not purchasing big ticket items out of liquid fuels like we have in the past. Right now, it's just slated to do salt and, some small supplies, maintenance tools, some things that can come out of liquid fuels. But, Steve and I are really trying to increase that budget moving forward, so we can do mill and overlays moving forward coming out of the liquid fuels funds. And finally, last is the ARPA funds that we talked about. You can see in revenues on page 43, for the past, 2 years, we've received 174 and some change for a total of 348. And as mentioned on the expenditures, we're taking that 348 and we are transferring it directly to capital projects to pay for that utility replacement project on Broad Street and North Main Street. So I think that's an overview of what the proposed 2023 budget is for Hatfield Borough. Again, just highlighting no revenue increases in real estate taxes, a revenue increase in electric, and a revenue increase in sewer is what the proposed budget has. Are there any questions or questions from you? Or you're the only audience. You want to think about it?
No, I mean, I don't want to.
Oh, okay.
This is their meeting, but I'd rather
Yeah.
go.
If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So I'm curious, set the property, what's the thought process there? The alternative to not leasing it all. Why do you want to be a landlord? I guess is the next one.
Well, what it does is it gives us some control of that. So for example, one interested party that would love to get hold of that is the railroad. They want to store stuff on it. So basically become a junket, which obviously would diminish the perception of the borough. So it allows us to have some control over who goes into that and the businesses that go into it. So if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the borough did have, we had a tenant.
We had Woodburner, we had Salter, because Woodburner
Right.
rented from September.
Right, we had a tenant for a while, it worked out pretty nice.
Yeah.
The whole property, like where you do the Christmas tree.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
That property goes up probably a couple spaces where it's blacktopped up there is that property, and then it turns into Mr. Hackler's property, kind of, I don't want to say a quarter way into that parking lot, right? Is that what you would say?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah.
Heather Meadows. Burroughs Basin there. I just thought it was a developer space.
We call it Heather Meadows, but really Heritage Park. That Heritage Park is Hatfield Borough's park.
Okay.
So the basin within Heritage Park would be our basin.
Is it the one there off the drive into the development?
Yeah, the big one.
Is
that's
that
right there.
always there, or is that built as part of the development?
That was built as with the development along when they did the open space for the parks. Yeah, so it was all part of that, like turning the farm into the park and development, like 2000 maybe. That one.
Predates me, but it was part of the development, but developers long gone.
No, I know, but usually like, I assume that, like that sport. The one that's out there on Vine Street, they're responsible for maintaining it, right?
Yeah, because we put that in our developers agreement.
Right.
We learned.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just like additional parking, we propose new as well. We
Yeah.
have Heather Meadows, but not do theirs.
Right.
So again, this is just a draft. Budget Finance and Labor is going to continue to meet, continue to make tweaks on this. If you have any suggestions or things you want to see, or you want to see a little bit more detail in something, certainly send any of us an email, let us know, and we'd be happy to explain. You again will see this at the December workshop meeting. And then we'll put a motion to advertise it at that time for adoption at the December 21st meeting.
It needs 10 days. Needs to be advertised that people can view it for 10 days. There
Yeah.
is.
Because it's like 7.
Right.
I think we.
We have to be right ready for it. And, technically, we have 14 days and we do have a daily newspaper work. We're lucked out.
Yeah.
I have a municipality that uses a weekly and it's nerve wracking to meet their deadline, and get things in.
Well, let me say that, Jamie did mention we've been meeting for a while on this, I'm actually quite proud of this because, we put money in there for infrastructure changes in a time and climate when costs are increasing drastically, right? When you saw some of these workers' comp increase 6%, property and liability 26%, health benefits 11%, police increase 2 to 3%. I mean, there's just increases all over the board. Plus, PPL is increasing 11%. And the fact that we're still building up our infrastructure, we're still doing more public events, spending money on that. And we have just a minimal increase in the residents, I think is a huge deal. So when we talk about $56 a year, it's not a whole lot. So we don't want to increase anything, but we also want to be conscious of the fact that all these costs are increasing. We want to kind of meter out how those expenses we're passing on to our residents. So I'm very proud of this. And again, it's not finished. If you guys have questions or suggestions, we're open to it. But I think, hats off to Jamie and her crew. They've been doing a great job. So. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Diane.
All right, so having done that, we'll go on to item 7, new business. So item A, years of service recognition.
I just wanted to put this on your radar that we'll have years of service recognition like we do every year. That's when Borough Council recognizes staff, volunteers, committee members for their years of service to the borough. Currently, we're going to have some staff, planning commission, council, and zoning hearing board. Katie and I are working together, and we will have these for you so you can see at the next council meeting. It's just a nice resolution that council does to recognize the commitment that staff has and volunteers and committee members have to Hatfield Borough.
Any questions? Item B, planning commission term.
So the term of Larry Stevens is up at the December 31st, at the end of December, so December 31st, 2022. His 4-year term is up for serving on the planning commission. We did reach out to Larry, and Larry is interested in continuing to serve on the planning commission. So just wanted to bring that to your attention that you have to, if council is interested, reappoint Larry to another 4-year term to serve on the planning commission.
What does it have to be done?
At the end of the year.
All right, item C, zoning hearing board, alternate term.
So Dan Rook's term serving as the alternate on the zoning hearing board is also up December 31st, 2022. We reached out to Dan and have yet to hear back if he was interested in continuing to serve as the alternate. We will reach out to him again, but same as with the planning commission, this needs to be reappointed by the end of the year. If not, we will just have a vacancy for the term going into the next year until we can find somebody who's interested in being appointed.
What's the term for that as well?
4 years.
4 years. All right, any questions on new business? If not, we'll hit item number 8, old business, 2023 meeting dates.
So the draft meeting dates are located in your packets. The changes that were made after discussion was the February regular meeting will be pushed back to February 16th, which is actually going to be a Thursday. instead of falling on February 15th, which would have been the Wednesday due to a conflict with the conference. And the major change in this is that it's proposed that council meetings are now going to start at 7:00 PM instead of 7:30 PM, which falls in line with the planning commission and the zoning hearing board, who also meet in the evenings and meet at 7:00 PM. I do know that Councilmember Gerard and Mayor Gerard have a conflict in April. I haven't heard of any other conflicts, so was it the 19th? 5th? So the 5th will be the workshop meeting in April. If you wanted to continue to leave it at that date, or you wanted to move the date to accommodate that they will be absent, that is up to you guys, but I do know that I heard that they have a conflict for those dates, that date, I'm sorry. Right now, Planning Commission is going to see this on December 5th, because their dates might change, so we're not looking to advertise it until the December meeting anyway, so we can have some conversation about moving dates or what that might look like.
Any questions?
Do you want to change the April date? I mean, you still have a quorum without that.
Yeah, we should. So, I guess my first thought was, let's just go ahead and leave it. I know I mentioned to the manager and team earlier today that I've got a conflict with January 18th. I'm gonna be in Europe, so, but I don't think it's necessary to change the meeting dates. I think you guys can go on if I'm not here. So.
A quorum's 3, so you could,
Right.
and everybody's usually very attentive. So
Right.
usually you do pretty well.
So my thought would be is keep the dates if we can, and, save stuff for.
I'll wait to hear feedback from Planning Commission, and then you'll see this again at the December 7th meeting, and then we'll authorize to advertise.
All right, item B, the North Penn Water Authority representative.
As we spoke about at the workshop meeting, North Penn Water Authority is looking for a representative to serve on the board of directors. Currently, that representative is Ken Farrell. He will have been serving in that role for roughly 30 years. I think it'll be 30 years next year, and Ken is interested in continuing to serve in that role. And that's on for consideration as an action item this evening to appoint Ken. And then I will draft a letter letting North Penn Water Authority know.
And that's a 5-year term.
Correct, yes.
Any questions on that? If there are none, we'll go on to action items. We have one action item tonight, and that is to consider Ken Farrell as the Borough of Hatfield North Penn Water Authority representative to serve a 5-year term expiring December 31st, 2027.
Move to appoint him.
Second.
I got a motion from Councilor Stevens, a second from Councilman Presser. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none. So the motion passes. All right, item number 10, motion to pay the bills. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second. I get a motion from Councilman Gerard, a second from Councilman Fagan. Any questions on the bills? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are none, motion passes. All right, we are gonna have executive session to talk about legal matters and other things, so can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you everyone for coming tonight.